Attorney Gigi Sohn withdrawing her nomination to serve as the commissioner of the FCC. Sohn was picked by President Biden more than a year ago. It's like 16 months ago. But her confirmation had been opposed by Republicans and some Democrats. The FCC remains hobbled with only 4 commissioners, 2 from each, 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans instead of 5. Our next guest was vocal in his opposition to Sohn. Joining us is Texas Senator Ted Cruz. He is a ranking member of the Commerce Committee and also a member of the Foreign Relations and Joint Economic Committees. And I don't know what your motivation was. I wasn't quite as familiar with Ms. Sohn. And now that we're talking about it, Senator. I mean, the former president ruffled a lot of the feathers with a lot of his tweets, but no one said he couldn't be president. But well, actually, some people did say that, probably. I'm surprised, though, that the left is surprised that maybe some of these tweets might have raised an eyebrow. Here's one. She called Trump a raggedy, white supremacist president who would rather kill everybody than stop killing black people. So she was going to have a pretty important post. Were there other Twitter? What was it that you had a problem with? Was it about just net neutrality?
Well, listen, I think her record for the past 30 years has been as a hard left partisan activist. That's who she is. That's the record she had built up. So she had lots of tweets, lots of public statements. She had supported left-wing groups that astonishingly had attacked about half the senators on the Commerce Committee, including not just Republicans, about half the Democrats. She had funded attacks on them from the left. This is someone who is a partisan activist. This is someone who had described, for example, Fox News as a threat to democracy. This is someone who had advocated using government power to deny licenses to stations with which she disagreed, to silence voices she disagreed with. And I think that is profoundly dangerous. That there's a role in life for partisan advocates on both sides. But for the independent agency that is charged with regulating broadcasters and the internet and communications, putting a hardcore partisan advocate on there who can silence and censor anyone she disagrees with, I think that's profoundly dangerous. It was a mistake that the president nominated her. I don't know why he stuck with this nomination for 16 months. It was clear she didn't have the votes to be confirmed. And I think this is a good week for free speech because the president and the White House acknowledged reality, which is that she was not going to be confirmed, and the FCC is not a place to put a hardcore partisan.
Senator Manchin finally, I guess, sort of the straw that broke the camel's back, but it certainly did take a long time. I wonder, and now a lot of Democrats are she's angry at Democrats, I guess, for not being more vociferous in their support for her, right?
Well, that's right. She put out a long statement basically blasting everyone.
Lobbyists, money, dark money, and actually she said it's the real losers are the country because she can't be in that position, was her take on the whole thing.
Well, yeah, look, and I understand someone who's a partisan activist on either side. They believe what they believe, and that's fine. We have a democracy that's built on debate and free speech and discussion, and it's perfectly fine for her to advocate for her view. It's a different thing when she uses that view she's put in a place where she has the power to silence anyone that doesn't agree with her view. And I think that's very dangerous. As you know, I'm deeply concerned about censorship across the board. I'm deeply concerned about big tech censorship and the silencing of views with which they disagree. It's why I believe the single most important development in the last decade for free speech was Elon Musk's buying Twitter, that it changed the game fundamentally, that the big tech oligarchs did not count on someone coming and spending $44 billion and then going open kimono, releasing the internal communications.
Probably a lot of Democrats that and I don't want to get into a Fox News debate, but when you said that she said that Fox News was a threat to democracy, how many Democrats are out in the audience going, yeah, so, I mean, that in hindsight, do you think that has any more credence than it may have had when she said it?
Well, I don't. And listen, it's fine. If you don't like Fox News, don't watch it. You know, I'm not particularly a fan of MSNBC or CNN. I think they're both very, very biased. But the great thing is I have a channel selector. I can choose what I watch. And what I'm not advocating is using government power to shut down CNN or to shut down MSNBC. That would be wrong. They have a right to speak. They have a right to have their opinions. I got to say, I miss the days, when I was first elected to the Senate 10 years ago, a station like CNN was much more in the middle. I used to go on CNN about once a week, and you could have reasonable discussions. They didn't agree with me, but you could have a reasonable discussion. Now, what happened when Donald Trump became president for much of the corporate media, they hate him so much that it just broke them. They foam at the mouth and loathe him. And I got to say, Joe, I yearn for the days where journalists aspired to be journalists. Today, for much of the corporate media, their view is that they are an advocate, a partisan advocate. They're no longer trying to report both sides. Look, one of the things I love about Squawk Box, just very briefly, is we have real substantive conversations that get into details and engage, and you guys do a fantastic job of that. I wish the rest of the media did as well.
Senator, I'm curious, given the comments you made about partisan activism and the like, what your reaction is to all of the emails and other things that have come out in this Dominion Fox case, where it appears.
Well, I just asked him.
I know, but he hasn't. He didn't speak to it because here you have people who clearly have one view privately, and we're telling the public something very different. Do you agree that that's partisan activism too?
Oh, listen, I understand why people think it's fun to read those emails, and I suspect, Andrew, if we were reading your emails and Joe and Becky's, there'd be some things y'all said that would make some scintillating news, and that's just part of life and part of humanity. At the end of the day, I'm a big fan of Fox News. I'm a big fan of you guys. I'm a big fan of any forum that lets you have a real and substantive conversation about the challenges facing this country. And listen, the fact that you had some hosts and some executives at Fox News that said less than nice things about Donald Trump, I don't know that that's all that shocking. Donald Trump is many things, but he's obviously a polarizing figure that people have strong sentiments on, and that has been the reality in politics for a long time.
That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about, and I can remember at the time watching Sidney Powell and watching Giuliani on there, and I said, if there wasn't something to the things that they're saying, they wouldn't be on Fox News saying these things. So a whole swath of people in the country ended up really believing a lot of that stuff was true, and they ended up at the Capitol. So it's not just saying mean things about Trump. I mean, a news organization shouldn't be feeding the flames of something that could end up like that. Should it? Not deliberately. I mean, there had to be some type of oversight that would have prevented that, you would think.
So, Joe, listen, I don't disagree that there were some kooky theories that were floating around in the immediate wake of the 2020 elections, and some theories that sounded obviously ridiculous. My latest book is entitled Justice Corrupted, How the Left Has Weaponized Our Legal System. There's an entire chapter in that book, chapter 6 as it so happens, that discusses January 6th, and it goes into what was the evidence of voter fraud, what was the litigation, and I talk about, some of the kooky claims. I mean, there were claims that Hugo Chavez in Venezuela was hacking into voting machines that were they didn't make any sense at the time, and I wish some of those theories hadn't been thrown out there. I do think voter fraud is a real issue. I do think it should be examined based on the facts and the evidence. But it was evident then, and it's evident now that not every theory on the internet is true. And by the way, that's true on both the right and the left.
You mentioned, I agree with activist journalists, and it was actually posited at one point at one of the greatest institutions we have in journalism that Donald Trump was so unique that a new type of journalism was necessary that wasn't based on objectivity. That was actually posited and that was that was 2016, I think. And ever since then, I think people have taken that ball and run with it on both sides. It's probably not great.
You look at something like Barry Weiss's resignation letter at the New York Times, where it is as powerful an indictment of today's corporate journalism as I've ever seen, where she says, she talks about how in many ways the New York Times is governed by Twitter and the radical left, and they will silence views that are not just right of center, but are not on the fringes of the left in a way that, you know, for a paper like the New York Times that is read by journalists all over the country, is deeply harmful. I yearn for the days of a Tim Russert. I yearn for the days where you had journalists on stations across the board that wanted to get to the truth, but that didn't view their role as being an advocate for their particular point of view. I yearn for the Walter Cronkites. Today you turn on CNN and you have a panel of 5 experts, all 5 of whom agree that Donald Trump is the most evil source of everything on the planet and is destroying the universe. Well, that's not much of a discussion if you have 5 people who are all saying, no, he's worse than that. That is editorializing at that point. That's not actually broadcasting news.
All right, Senator, next time you're on, we've got other things to talk about, obviously, but about the FCC, communications, everything else. We'll do China next time, maybe. We got a lot on your plate. Anyway, we appreciate having you on this morning. All right, see you later.
Thanks, Joe. Appreciate it. Okay.